Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Regular meeting of council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Central Elgin. It is Monday, February 27th at 7 p.m. We welcome those in the council chambers as well as those that are online. If I could ask for us to stand for the national anthem, please. Oh, Canada, our home and native land, through patriot love, in all our sons command. We see we rise, a true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. From thee, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My microphone was on, so apologies to the ears and the group. The Municipality of Central Elgin acknowledges that it is located on the land of the McKee Treaty that was signed by the Wyandot and the Anishinaabe nations, including ancestors of the Chippewa of the Thames First Nation. It is also the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Attawandarak, and Mississauga Nation. These First Nations continue to provide ongoing stewardship of the land and waters of the Municipality of Central Elgin. Councillors, may I ask for any disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Ladies and gentlemen, with your permission, I would like to read a statement. This afternoon, or this morning rather, a release went out, and I wanted to put it on the record today with the group here, the group online, and my fellow councillors. On February 26th, the Honourable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, introduced Bill 63, St. Thomas Central Elgin Boundary Adjustment Act, to annex 1,500 acres from the Municipality of Central Elgin into the City of St. Thomas to consolidate an investment-ready mega site in southwestern Ontario. The lands contemplated within Bill 63 are exponentially greater than the lands contemplated by the June 8th, 2022 City of St. Thomas and City of St. Thomas Economic Development Corporation issued joint press release entitled City of St. Thomas Assembles Land for Mega Site Development. Up until our discussion with the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade on Tuesday of last week, the discussion had been around the original parcel of land. I was taken off guard when I learned for the first time that this bill was actually going to be 1,500 acres. 75% of this land is in Central Elgin. The Municipality of Central Elgin has worked in partnership with the province to establish the Municipality of Central Elgin employment lands. The municipality now faces a loss of these lands and additional agricultural lands to the City of St. Thomas. As I stated today, we are facing elevated costs of living, including increases in taxes and water utility rates, and our employment lands were potential revenue for us to help lower these rates. The municipality is disappointed that the existing provisions of the Municipal Act that provide for municipally developed, mutually agreeable boundary adjustment have not been utilized. The amount of land to be annexed into the City of St. Thomas from the Municipality of Central Elgin raises critical questions of why this investment-ready mega site was not simply placed wholly within the Municipality of Central Elgin. Our employment lands were our best hope to reduce the water and taxation levels for our residents. We have worked with MPP Rob Flack and the province to make them aware of the challenges we are facing, but want a firm commitment. I requested a meeting with the Minister of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, as well as the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to immediately discuss the annexation. I support growth and investment for our region, but at what cost to the Central Elgin taxpayer? Thank you very much. So an adoption of the meeting minutes, please, if I could get a mover. Councillor Halpin, and if I could get a seconder, Councillor Connors.
The motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Connors, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council dated Monday, February the 13th, 2023 be adopted.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. No delegations this evening. We're going right through here to reports. Central Elgin Planning Office. CEP 0723, application to amend the Township of Yarmouth bylaw 45714 Edgeware line. Comments or discussion? Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Watson, Deputy Mayor Noble.
The motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that report CEP 0723 reapplication to amend Township of Yarmouth bylaw 1998 45714 Edgeware line, Yorkland Farms Limited be received, and that direction be given by council to prepare a site-specific draft amendment to the Township of Yarmouth zoning bylaw to satisfy conditions of a residence surplus to a farming operation severance on lands located at 45714 Edgeware line, which may be legally described as Range 1, north of Edgeware Road, Lot 16, Municipality of Central Elgin. And further, that a date for a public meeting be established in accordance with Ontario Regulation 54506 as amended.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. CEP 0823, application to amend Township of Yarmouth zoning bylaw 1998 452, not reading the same one, 45255 Sparta line, Vries Family Farms Limited. Questions or comments from council? If I could get a mover. Councillor Bachman, Councillor Watson is the seconder.
Motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Councillor Watson, that report CEP 0823 reapplication to amend Township of Yarmouth bylaw 1998 45255 Sparta line, Vries Family Farms Limited be received, and that direction be given by council to prepare a site-specific draft amendment to the Township of Yarmouth zoning bylaw to satisfy conditions of a residence surplus to a farming operation severance on lands located at 45255 Sparta line, which may be legally described as Concession 3, part of Lot 16, Municipality of Central Elgin. And further, that a date for a public meeting be established in accordance with Ontario Regulation 54506 as amended.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. CP 0923, applications to amend the Municipality of Central Elgin official plan in the Township of Yarmouth bylaw 410 Sunset Drive, follow-up report. Questions or comments for Mr. McClure, please? Oh, sorry. Well, I thought we'd discuss it before if there were, and then I would motion after. Okay. Do you have any questions, Councillor Halpin?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. As I looked through this, I was pleased to see that for me, the biggest concern here had been the water, because if the water was going to be a concern for the neighbors and if it was going to be affected, that would sort of create a hard line for me about this. But I was left unsure about the official plan, because I see that on one hand, you say that we need to be building to future development areas and that Union would be the most appropriate future development area. And then on the other hand, I also see that in the official plan, we need to be building in situations so that we're creating sufficient opportunity to accommodate growth and market demand for a mix of different residential types. And what I did notice was that on one hand, it seemed like we were defying the official plan if we don't build in the future development area that you've mentioned. And on the other hand, if we build in those future development areas, none of those really contemplates apartments. And so then we would never have apartments available to provide to our community. And that also is a problem with our plan. So could you please speak to that?
Thank you, Councillor Halpin. Mr. McClure, please.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan, through to Councillor Halpin. While I did note that, and again, I think it should be noted that all the comments in there are, I guess, raised as to provide council with a level of risk with going forward with what's being proposed, given the policy direction in the official plan. Ultimately, as I've indicated through the original staff report and through this report itself, There are more than sufficient designated lands within the within the municipality of Central Elgin. Specifically, as you noted with the future development lands, those have been spoken to as part of the official plan update to address lands that would be for future development or can't come online for future development, given the fact that we have an oversupply. But that's not to say that the lands elsewhere within the municipality that are currently designated can't already provide for those range of housing types that you're speaking to with respect to apartments and that. As we know, we have several approved applications within the Port Stanley, with Kokomo having a number of apartments. We have an approved site plan on East Road for apartment buildings there. I know that we're definitely seeing way more applications and developers coming forward with development proposals on designated lands to allow for that range and mix of housing options that you noted in the official plan. Ultimately, though, because the plan itself acknowledges that there is an oversupply and those lands are kind of earmarked for future development uses, it's a risk in the sense of if we are now adding more lands to the residential land supply, which we already know that we have sufficient amounts to, those individuals that have designated lands could raise concerns or opposition to that because it makes it harder for them to then bring their lands online. But as a municipality, you're planning for growth and development on infrastructure, planned infrastructure for those types of uses. And we already have lands that are designated for those types of growth elsewhere. So I think that's one of the reasons why, again, we're raising this as a risk. Ultimately, council can side in favor of or change in land use designation, but there's reasons and rationale within the provincial policy statement and the planning documents to kind of ensure that we have a supply up to 25 years, because that allows for like I guess efficient growth and use of resources to guide and direct that growth. Notwithstanding that the specific proposal, high density is what we're seeing a lot throughout the municipality. But as kind of indicated in the previous report and this obviously just isn't supported because of the fact that we have other lands that are better suited for residential development and are designated for those uses.
Mr. McClure, thank you. Councillor Halpin, follow up? No, sorry, pardon me. Councillor Halpin, please. Or sorry, Councillor Graham, please.
Are there development fees that go along with this property? Or does it fall under Bill 23 that there's no development fees?
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Mr. Shipway, may I?
For you, Mr. Mayor, right now it's just dealing with the planning, the zoning and the OP. Development charges, those fees are determined at the building permit stage after site plan, when it would be known exactly what the type and use of the facility would be. So at this point in time, staff can't speak about that in great detail. That would be determined at a later date and isn't really subject to the planning decisions that are being made right now.
Councillor Graham for the follow-up, please. Thank you, Mr. Shipway.
Don't we know that it's apartments though?
Mr. Perrin, please.
So Bill 23 does provide some relief from development charges, depending on whether it's free-owned or freehold or owned, or whether it's rental. If it's rental, then development charges do get reprieved.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Councillors, any other questions or comments? If I could get a mover and a seconder for the motion, please. Quickly, sorry, Councillor Graham. Okay, can I get a seconder? Councillor Watson.
The motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Graham, seconded by Councillor Watson, that report CEP 0923 reapplications to amend the Municipality of Central Elgin official plan and the Township of Yarmouth bylaw and the Township of Yarmouth zoning bylaw 410 Sunset Drive follow-up report be received, and that council refuse the proposed amendments to the Municipality of Central Elgin official plan and the Township of Yarmouth bylaw number 1998 as they are inconsistent with the provincial policy statement 2020, the County of Elgin official plan, and the Municipality of Central Elgin official plan.
Discussion. Is there discussion now, Mr. Shepherd? Couldn't we have discussion? We had discussion before. Councillor Halpin, you'll apologize. I'm not as versed on these rules as you are, so I'm going to always defer to you and thank you for your input.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sloan. When I realized that it seemed as if there were certain parts of the official plan that were going to go in both directions as far as this, I went back and looked through our census data to try and get an understanding of how many people would be affected on what sides of this equation. And what I found was that right now in Central Elgin, by our last data, we have 5,460 houses, and of those, only 170 are apartments. So that means that even with some apartments going up in Port Stanley, which is necessary, we're in a situation where 30% of Ontario is renting and 31% of Central Elgin is 60 or over. And we don't have homes that can accommodate a person who, for any reason, is unwilling or unable to shovel a driveway or push a lawnmower or wash the siding. We're really failing to acknowledge here that we have people who have taken part in this community for their whole lives and may prefer to stay here even at a point where there are things that are more burden than they want. And this development specifically looks to increase our apartment numbers and to create something that would be accessible. And it proposes to do that targeting specifically seniors, which we know is going to be our growing population for the foreseeable future. So although I see that it does conflict with the official plan, and I appreciate Mr. McClure's explanation, I think that if it's going to be in opposition in both directions, and if we have this many people that can't get housing of this kind right now, we should consider rejecting this motion and instead putting a new motion out to accept.
Councillor Graham.
I think that in this situation, we should be taking on the point of Mr. McClure's expertise in it. He's talked about an oversupply of residential lands that we already have in Central Elgin. There's other areas that are building up apartment buildings within Port Stanley and Central Elgin as well. I don't think that that means that there's not enough apartment buildings in Central Elgin at all. I think that we need to defer to the expert on this in this situation when he talks about the oversupply of lands and that it doesn't fit in with our official plan.
Other councillors have any comments, please? Thank you, Councillor Graham. Thank you. We have a vote on, I think we have one on the agenda. We have one, we've had a mover and a seconder. We have a motion on the table. Can I get, had a mover and seconder. I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Yes. Opposed? Mayor's voting in favor. Thank you. Motion carries. The report CEP 1023 application to amend the Village of Port Stanley bylaw 1507-37719 Lake Line follow-up report, Strathroy Turf Farms be received. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Watson. Deputy Mayor Noble. Discussion. Council? Any comments? Councillor Graham, please.
So I see that it's zoned open space right now. So I'm wondering if, since we do have a oversupply of residential, I have some concerns with this piece of property as well. So again, the oversupply, like you had said, Mr. McClure, about residential. Sorry, you'll have to forgive me. I've just gotten off the road from a from a snowstorm, so my mind is not all there. I know that the single access is an issue as well, because coming off of Lakeline onto Warren and Carlow, that's an extremely busy area, especially in the summertime. So that has a lot of people concerned about it as well. Obviously the drainage, and I know that you've spoken to this in the report, but there's other instances where drainage was approved or KCCA or people had approved, and then there have been resulting drainage issues. And I foresee that this would be part of the problem as well. But those are my main concerns: the access, the fact that even though it is potentially, or that it is in the official plan as to be future designated as residential, it is open space right now, allowing for seasonal campgrounds, farm use, drainage, conservation. It's a natural hazard. It's a natural heritage area. So these are my concerns when it comes to developing this piece of property.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Other councillors have comments? Mr. McClure, please.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan. Just through you to Councillor Graham. I guess that's one of the things that needs to be understood through the official plan designation. The lands are designated for residential use. So the principle of land use has already been established in the plan as approved by council. So it's the long-term intention for that area to be developed for residential use. Notwithstanding that the open space zone on the property exists today, that zone dates back to the Township of Southold bylaw, similar to the Yarmouth bylaws and Port Stanley bylaw. That dates back to the late 1960s. So ultimately, the zoning on the land hasn't caught up to what the ultimate intent of the land use designation is on the property. So that's why they're going through this process. It's essentially aligning the designated use, which again allows for that range of uses as outlined in the official plan for the range and mix that Councillor Halpin was speaking to earlier on. So so essentially through this process, the policies already permit and allow for residential use on the property. The zoning just is out of step with what's the land use designation is. So that's why they're going through this process to make sure that it complies. With respect to the single access, the traffic studies have been submitted in support of that of the proposal and was reviewed by the county and municipal staff, given the fact of the immediately adjacent or in proximity to county road. And they were satisfied with the traffic arrangement and turning along that road. And then similarly with the drainage, as you indicated, KCCA, a number of studies have been prepared and supported, further with ground truthing, dealing with the topographic survey information that further supported that there wouldn't be any impacts. And again, all of these figures and that were brought forward were to address the kind of like the Hurricane Hazel type of storm event, which is a major event that the municipality hasn't seen in over 100 years, I believe. It's something like that. So ultimately, even at that extreme, the studies have been prepared to support the development.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Councillor Graham.
Just one follow-up question. So are these lands included when you made the assessment of there being an oversupply of residential? They are?
Mr. McClure, please.
Yes, and that's a good point of clarification is that when we look at this, the land use schedules in the official plan, all of the, in the instance for the Central Elgin official plan, all those areas that are highlighted yellow are those areas that are designated for future residential use and or are currently being used for residential use. So that's where it does become a bit confusing at times when an example being when you go down Colonel or Bostwick Road in Union and you look to the north and it's all farmed. Well, that's technically been designated for residential use since at least the 2013 official plan. So notwithstanding what's on the ground currently, there's a number of lands throughout the municipality that have been designated for residential use and approved through this council and previous councils for that growth and development. So ultimately that's where when we're looking at land supply, that's what we're taking in, and that's been accounted for the municipality and their future needs.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Wilson.
Motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Watson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that report CEP 1023, application to amend the Village of Port Stanley bylaw 1507, 37719 Lakeline follow-up report, Strathroy Turf Farms be received, and that council support in principle the proposed draft plan of subdivision file number 34T CE 2101 on lands owned by Strathroy Turf Farms, which lands may be legally described as part of Clergy Reserve Lot D, north of the Lake Road, and part of James Begg Lots 14 and 15, Registered Plan Number 20, MIDD, and part of road allowance between Lots 14 and 15, north of the Lake Road, and all of Lot T, Registered Plan Number 39 in the Municipality of Central Elgin. And further, that council approved the proposed zoning bylaw amendment to the Village of Port Stanley bylaw 1507 as it is consistent with the 2020 provincial policy statement, the County of Elgin official plan, and the Municipality of Central Elgin official plan.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Our next report is from the Director of Infrastructure and Community Services, ICS 0423, Drinking Water Quality Management System Management Review and Infrastructure Review. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Connors and Councillor Halpin. Thank you. Mr. Perrin, did you wish to speak to this? Oh, sorry, pardon me, Mr.
That'll be
Perrin.
Mr. Brooks's report.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Brooks. Did you wish to speak to this, sir? Jeff having technical difficulties?
Can you hear me?
We can, sir. Please go ahead, Mr. Brooks.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the report includes the minutes from both the management review of the drinking water quality management system for the Central Elgin and Belmont systems, as well as the infrastructure review of the same. These meetings are a requirement of the DWQMS operational plan and the Safe Drinking Water Act. The management review meeting is a review of the system performance, and the infrastructure review is a thorough review of the infrastructure and outlines identified issues and recommends future projects. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Council, questions, comments? Ms. Wilson, please.
The motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Connors, seconded by Councillor Halpin, that report ICS 0423, Drinking Water Quality Management System Management and Infrastructure Review be received for information, and that the Council of the Corporation of the Municipality of Central Elgin receive the minutes of the Drinking Water Quality Management System Management Review dated December the 22nd, 2022, and the Infrastructure Review report dated January the 5th, 2023.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. ICS 0523, annual water reports for the Belmont Water System, the Central Elgin Distribution System. If I could get a mover and a seconder. Councillor Bachman, Councillor Watson, thank you. Are we having a presentation or any questions? Or are we a presentation on this, Mr. Brooks, or does any of the councillor have any questions?
I can just, Mr. Mayor, ICS 0523 are the annual water reports. The Ontario Regulation 170-03, drinking water systems under the Safe Drinking Water Act requires the owners of a water system to complete both a summary and annual report. The annual report is included within the summary reports for both the Belmont and the Central Elgin distribution system.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Ms. Wilson.
The motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Councillor Watson, that report ICS 0523 2022 re-water reports for the Belmont Water System and the Central Elgin Distribution System be received for information.
All those, sorry, Councillor.
I have a question.
Oh, I apologize. Councillor Graham had a question.
Mr. Brooks, is there, so sorry, just to catch up a little bit, we're voting on the replacement of the water, the first phase of replacing all the water meters. Is that correct? This is part of that?
Mr. Brooks.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, this is just accepting the annual reports as information. There's no commitment to any projects by accepting these reports.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. White Street. Thank you very much. ICS 0.623, White Station RAP stockpile agreement. If I could get a mover and a seconder. Councillor Halpin and Councillor Connors. Questions or comments? Starting with Councillor Graham, please.
So I'm just wondering why, if we, and sorry, who speaks to this? Is this asset? Is this Mr. Perrin?
Mr. Brooks.
Mr. Brooks? If we're leasing this property and they're asking to take back part of the property for storage, why a payment or a fee or a reduction in our lease costs wouldn't be part of that?
Mr. Brooks, thank you, Councillor Graham.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the county is just looking for a small space to stockpile materials. Historically, the county and some of its contractors have utilized the facility for this same use. However, moving forward, staff thought it prudent to formalize an agreement just to make the stockpile legal and understand both sides' rights.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Councillor Graham, any follow-up?
Is there a space, like, was there a calculation of the space? I'm just wondering because, if I'm renting a house and the landlord wants to use the basement, usually there would be a reduction in cost for my rent, let's say, as an analogy. So I'm just wondering what the amount of spaces that they're using. Was there any discussion through staff of a fee imposed on that?
Mr. Brooks, please. Thank you.
Based on the area that's being utilized for the stockpile and the overall area of the site, we're looking at, I don't know the exact area of the site. I believe it's around 60 acres. This is probably about a half-acre area that they're just using for stockpile of open space. So the calculation would be very small.
Thank you. Any other questions, Council? Ms. Wilson.
The motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Connors, that report ICS 0623 White Station RAP stockpile agreement be received for information, and that Central Elgin Council execute the attached agreement with the County of Elgin, permitting the counties to stockpile RAP from various county road paving projects at White Station until December 31st of 2025.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. From the Director of Financial Services, DFS 0323, request for proposals 2022-21 comprehensive zoning bylaw and urban design standards. If I could get a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Connors, Councillor Watson. And it's, before I ask if there's any questions, is there a presentation on this, or council, are we? Mr. Shipley, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Generally for staff reports, we wouldn't have one, but we're happy to provide an overview of council requests on any and all.
Thank you, sir. I wouldn't mind a little overview if that's possible. Mr. Perrin, thank you.
Since this is a planning type project, I can give a bit of an overview. So Council of the Municipality of Central Elgin adopted the new official plan back at the end of or in the fall of 2022. That has subsequently been approved by the County of Elgin as the approval authority for the municipal official plans within Elgin County. So the next step to that process is to update the municipality's zoning bylaws. At this point,
Sorry, Mr. Perrin.
sorry. So the next
you.
step then with respect to planning documents is to update the municipality zoning bylaw. Currently, the municipality utilizes the 3 zoning bylaws from each of the former municipalities, Village of Belmont, Village of Port Stanley, and the Township of Yarmouth. 2 of those were created in 1968. The other one was created in 1991, Belmont being the newest one. Those zoning bylaws are quite out of date with respect to standards of development today. And there is a necessity to take and update those. We've heard that many times over the last, we'll say, decade and a half, 2 decades, that our zoning bylaws are out of date. So this process is to engage the services of a consultant to undertake that work. The estimated time to undertake the work is 12 to 14 months. It's a very comprehensive project because we have to acknowledge existing zoning on property and existing site-specific zoning, and ensure that we don't infringe on existing property rights of landowners with the creation of new zoning bylaws. So Mr. McClure, he can maybe add if I've missed anything. But that's the scope of this project.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Mr. McClure, anything else to add? Mr. McClure, please.
Thank you. I think this is an example of, and as Mr. Perrin alluded to, like going back to the previous report in Port Stanley, where the land use designations across the municipality don't necessarily comply. Sorry, the zoning doesn't necessarily comply with the land use designations. So what this would be doing would be streamlining the several pieces of documentation that are currently municipalities utilizing, creating a more permissive document that deals with and addresses the land use designations and the policy direction that's been approved to support growth and development within the municipality. But as well as one of the other aspects here is the urban design standards that has been kind of at the forefront for a number of years as well. That's going to be looking forward to deal with municipal comprehensive design standards that would apply across the municipality for those types of development as well. So I think that's a way to kind of ensure that we're meeting the policy goals of the official plan, putting bylaws in place that support that development, and then at least now putting forward a kind of council approved set of design standards that staff and that can review applications against as well.
Thank you, Mr. McClure. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Graham, please.
Can you, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. McClure, can you explain to me what do you mean by design standards?
Thank you, Mr. McClure.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor Sloan, through you to Councillor Graham. So right now, as part of, and the province allows for undertaking urban design or applying urban design in certain contexts, you need to have the policy framework in order to do that. And right now, the municipality's official plan through its community design section outlines general goals and objectives that the municipality has in achieving through development applications. And to further, I guess, illustrate what those design objectives are, and those kind of design guideline standards are, I guess, there's policies in there that say that the municipality can create a separate document to show what those guidelines would be based on the policy direction. So again, I think the important thing to note, in which is a bit of a I don't know, confusing at times, is that they are design guidelines. So they help guide and direct growth. They're a representation, council approved representation of what the municipality would like to see. But again, they're guidelines. They're assisted. They're meant to assist in achieving what the municipality would like to see on the ground through the site plan and approvals process.
Councillor Graham.
So does that mean that there'll be consultation with people in the municipality or council, or who's that consulting with?
Please, Mr. McClure.
Thank you, Mayor Sloan, through to Councillor Graham. The entire process with respect to the comprehensive zoning bylaw update, the proposed urban design guidelines, similar to the official plan, there'd be comprehensive consultation. There's an engagement strategy that would be prepared by the consultant in order to engage with all members of the community, including the development industry. Ultimately, the design standards and that, as Mr. Perrin has indicated, are intended to reflect what the development industry wants to see, and allows them to achieve, the goals and objectives that we are trying to achieve without having to go forward and go through a billion amendments all the time to deal with things. But it's also something that the public and council wants to see as well. So all that's going to be, we're going to be, doing a comprehensive engagement process where all of that is kind of vetted, and then ultimately a recommendation is brought back to council for approval.
Councillor Graham.
One final question to this. Do we not have that expertise in-house, taking into consideration the planning services? Is that not something that we have to go out of house to have done?
Mr. McClure. Thank you, Councillor Graham.
I mean, I don't want to, again, as in outside working for the Central Elgin Planning Office, ultimately, I think it really comes down to direction and timelines provided to undertake a project. Obviously, there's a level of service that the municipality would like to achieve with respect to the number of applications that the municipality is receiving. But I'm not too sure Mr. Perrin can speak to some of the other aspects to that.
Mr. Perrin, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Graham. This project, as it sits right now, is around 880 to 900 hours worth of work on behalf of the consultant. Public consultation, policy investigation with other municipalities, as well as reviewing existing policy. So it is comprehensive, and that's why the municipality has gone out for consultants to undertake this work, because it's a large quantity of work in a relatively short period of time.
Councillor Graham, thank you.
And sorry, why is it being undertaken? Was there a direction that it was to be undertaken in a short period of time?
Mr. Perrin, please.
We say it's a short period of time. It's actually a fairly extensive period of time, 14 months by the time you go through public consultation, review existing zoning bylaws, review existing policy, come back with draft zoning bylaws for public as well as council to consider. In order to undertake the work, it is going to take some time to do that, and to drag it out beyond 14 months is probably not beneficial to the municipality or the people using the zoning bylaw, being the public, developers, and staff.
Thank you. Councillor Bachman, please.
To Mr. Perrin, through you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, Mr. Perrin, we're looking at bottom line is, as I'm understanding it through the questions of Councillor Graham, we're looking at increasing efficiency and basically streamlining processes and having someone go through all of our bylaws and all this information to come up with a guideline, or not a guideline, but a way to operate. And it's going to take 800 to 900 hours of time that I don't see our staff as having that in their current capacity in the jobs that they're fulfilling currently. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bachman, that's correct. We don't have, staff don't have the time to dedicate to it in light of all the other demands that we have to deal with planning applications. You know, we have a full docket here this evening, right? So, and that's not even the tip of the iceberg compared to what we're dealing with today. Mr. McClure and I were in consultations on planning applications pretty much 3/4 of the day today. So at the end, this document will be a public facing document similar to what council has seen with, you know, our budget presentation, our detailed asset management plans, where it's not going to be the, you know, we'll say the old style zoning bylaw that's number of pages of printed text and you have to have a little bit of a legal background lots of times to interpret that. That's not the intent of this project. At the end, there will be a public facing GIS map where you can look up your property, identify what the zoning is currently on the property and what's permitted. So that will give a lot more flexibility to people that are using the zoning bylaw on a daily basis. And a lot of people outside of the organization or utilize that zoning bylaw outside. Real estate agents, property owners, people that are looking at acquiring property with an intended use. So you know, the planning office as well as municipal staff, we field a number of phone calls on a daily basis with respect to that zoning bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Next, Councillor Connors, and then Mr. McClure, or sorry, Councillor Connors, please.
Through you, Mayor, to Mr. Perrin. I didn't see the RFP, so I don't know what's involved in it. But to Councillor Bachman's point, yes, I understand that we don't have the hours to spend in doing this. So how do we measure it? How do we measure to say that you got what you, are they reporting to you? Are they dealing with you or Mr. McClure as we go on? How do you control this so that you know what is in the RFP is getting done? And how do you measure in the end that you got it done?
Thank you, Councillor Connors. Mr. Perrin, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Connors. So at the end of the day, it's a lump sum project. So if they spend 1,200 hours to give us the product that they, you know, provided us an RFP on and a scope, then that's up to them. The work program actually outlines a number of check-ins throughout. There's a Gantt chart that outlines key deliverables at certain dates and times. As well, in addition to that, there would be bi-weekly meetings with the project manager, the consultant, and the staff management team.
Through you, Mr. Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Perrin, and thank you, Councillor Connors. Councillor Graham, please.
My concern is that if we're spending $120,000 of our taxpayers' money and we have the ability to do that in-house, and we haven't done it since whenever amalgamation was in 1998, would it be of dire consequence if it took 2 years or 2.5 years and we saved the taxpayer money versus it being a quick process or quicker process?
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Mr. McClure, and then Mr. Shipway, please. Thank you.
And I guess just to put it in context, so I guess some of the things that should be noted here is that the Planning Act does require municipalities to update their official plans within 3 years of adopting an official plan. Why that hasn't occurred in the past, but none of the, I guess, part of the reasons and rationale to that is to implement the policy direction that council has approved through the official plan. So again, the intent is that you spent all this money and time and direction to grow, to guide growth and development within the municipality, and that the implementing zoning bylaw to implement that policy direction should be placed on the ground to stimulate that economic investment that would be of a benefit to the community of Central Elgin. So that gets into, again, the official plan looking out for the long-term investment for infrastructure improvements where you see want growth and development to go. So that's where you're spending your infrastructure dollars, and the zoning and things should be in place to help stimulate and guide that growth. So that when developers or industry comes knocking on Central Elgin's door, the zoning is in place to essentially go forward with building permits. The reason why we're going through and doing a comprehensive review and seeing the development industry is to see what the development community currently wants today in this day and age, not back in the 60s when the original bylaw was put in place. And that goes back to some of these applications that we're seeing now where we're having to go through, granted, Central Elgin is a very quick process comparatively to other neighboring municipalities to get to zoning amendments done. But this would alleviate that potential hurdle and then allow for and stimulate potential economic development opportunities that would add to the community by having more current zoning bylaw standards in place.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Bachman after Mr. Shipway.
Through Mr. Mayor, I think just to put on two other points, this has been included in the development charges background study. So this would be 75% funded, 90,000 from development charges. It's been in there for that. And just subjectively, I think the stakeholders involved would have liked to have seen this updated 24 years ago. I think it's one of the most tangible items that can provide benefit and clarity and enhance communication to all stakeholders in Central Elgin, and it would be supremely beneficial to get this completed as soon as possible, both for just the one-off applications, the larger applications, diversification of the tax base through commercial and industrial applications. It will have extreme tangible benefits as soon as you can get it in place, and it follows a similar process to the official plan process where a third-party consultant was retained to facilitate a lot of these engagements and consultations to produce a document that I think everyone can be proud of.
Thank you, Mr. Shipway. Councillor Bachman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank Mr. McClure and Mr. Shipway for clarifying a lot of those points. I just wanted to add the point that if we take this on as an in-house project, it takes away from the current job that our staff is currently doing. So I don't see a cost saving in any ways because we're going to have to hire somebody or take on more people to fill the holes if they're being assessed to do this job. Well, they're taking 1,200 hours away from the job they're currently doing and not counting the overtime that they put in currently. So I don't see it as a cost saving at all.
Thank you, Councillor Bachman. Mr. Perrin, please.
Maybe I'll answer Mr. McClure's question that he asked. He didn't know why the zoning bylaw hadn't been updated previously. I'll tell you why, because staff didn't have the time or the resources to do it. So that's why we're coming back, recommending a consultant to undertake the work. Even though a consultant's undertaking the work, it doesn't mean that Mr. McClure, Mr. McComb, and myself aren't still going to dedicate additional hours to this project outside of what we're already doing. It's going to take effort on staff's part to help ensure that we get the product that we need, that we hit the milestones that Councillor Connor spoke of, and they're going to require some input from staff with respect to the new zoning bylaw. So, we're not off the hook from getting this project done either. It's going to take resources on our part on top of what we're already doing.
Thank you. Councillor Halpin, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sloan. I can see that this would be really good, both for the efficiency of our staff and for accessibility for our community, because one of the most common refrains that I hear from the community when they're frustrated is that sometimes it takes 2 or 3 calls to different departments to get different pieces, to get one answer to one question. And it sounds like this is going to result in many people being able to answer their question on the first shot, which would be much better as far as access for the community. And then hopefully would also mean that the calls that do come through, the staff can devote more time to them. And that's how that should be if we're working toward making sure that everyone can get appropriate response from the municipality.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin. Any more questions or comments? Seeing none, Ms. Wilson.
The motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Connors, seconded by Councillor Watson, that report DFS 0323 request for proposals 2020 to 21 comprehensive zoning bylaw and urban design standards be received for information, and that council accept the proposal from Dillon Consulted Limited for the 2022-21 comprehensive zoning bylaw and urban design standards in the amount of $119,982.50 plus all applicable taxes.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Director of Asset Management and Development Services, AMDS 623, information report respecting proposed municipal-led zoning bylaw amendment of the Talbot Line industrial lands. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Connor, Deputy Mayor Noble. Did I see your hand go up? Were you, Mr. Perrin, to speak to this, please?
If I may, briefly, Mr. Mayor, so council directed staff to engage the services of MHBC Planning to undertake a municipally led zoning amendment process for the Talbot Line industrial lands. These are the lands that are identified in the municipality's official plan for industrial and as industrial commercial. They lie north of Talbot Line between Centennial and Talbot. Mr. Aston is present this evening to speak to the report that council has on the agenda, and just to give some outline as far as process and next steps.
It's Mr. Aston. Aston, please.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Thanks for the opportunity to speak this evening. And as mentioned by Mr. Perrin, the intent of this bylaw amendment is one that is being led by the municipality for a specific geographic area for future employment lands. The process really that we're going to follow is a Planning Act process with some additional consultation with the landowners within the study area. And as you can see in the report that was provided, we had an initial landowner meeting last week where there were a number of questions where we provided some responses and some comments. Our next steps will be to continue to provide follow-up to the landowners should there be questions that continue to come in. And what we're requesting this evening is that council provide direction to hold a formal public meeting under the Planning Act. What we will be doing in advance of that is drafting a report or a technical report that would lead to the ultimate draft of the zoning bylaw amendment for these lands. And there would be a further landowner consultation meeting in advance of that formal public meeting. So we're targeting that to occur over the next few months here, and would be happy to answer any questions on this item this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aston. Council, any questions? Councillor Halpin, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. With the introduction of Bill 63, can we expect that to change anything about the way that this process is handled?
Thank you, Councillor Halpin. I'm going to get Mr. Shipway to give some thought on this. Thank you.
Through Mr. Mayor, if I may jump in, absolutely, there may be some impact at this point in time. The staff recommendation to continue forward with the previous direction of council and wait for additional information that the mayor may glean, and we could revisit then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Aston. Mr. Perrin. Ms. Wilson.
Thank you.
The motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Connors, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that report AMDS 0623 information report respecting proposed zoning bylaw amendment of the Talbot Line industrial lands be received for information, and that direction be given by council to prepare a planning technical report and draft zoning bylaw amendment to the Township of Yarmouth bylaw, zoning bylaw 1998 for the Talbot Line industrial lands for a public meeting date in May of 2023.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Moving on, AMDS 0923 Port Stanley Harbor dredging. If I could start with a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Bachman and Councillor Halpin. Counselor, comments or questions on this, folks? Is there any, did staff want to speak anything about the dredging? Mr. Perrin, please.
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, the report that's before council addresses dredging in 2 locations. The first one is within the harbor, which is downstream of the lift bridge. The report speaks to a commitment that the municipality made to the Kettle Creek Conservation Authority back in 2015 with respect to maintenance of a certain elevation of the bed of the harbor and Kettle Creek in order to ensure that there's no adverse effect from flooding. That elevation of the creek bed is now at a point where we need to dredge in order to satisfy that commitment. Staff would have anticipated that we would have had maybe direction with respect to budget approval by this point. In fairness, council hasn't provided that direction, but we felt as staff it's prudent to inform council that there is a very select window to be able to get to tender, given the proximity of contractors that undertake this work in the area, that are in the area now undertaking work in Leamington and Kingsville. So there is work that is coming out from our understanding of this type of work for marine contractors within the next 4 weeks. And that will take the potential competition away that we would like to be benefit of with all those contractors currently looking for work. The tender is ready to go. We have approvals from Department of Fisheries and Oceans for in-lake disposal at this point. We're still awaiting approval from Ministry of Transport with respect to navigable waters, as well as Ministry of Environment with respect to the approval to dispose of the dredge material in lake. We anticipate that coming within the next couple of weeks. With respect to funding, there is an item in the report with respect to financial implications for the project. We have heard rumblings that there could be, or there was a thought that part of this work could be funded from the Disaster Mitigation Adaptation Fund that the municipality received grant money for. That is not a possibility. That DMAF program spoke to 4 specific components of the project, and they're within the report. Number 1 being the installation of stormwater infrastructure in the main beach project area. Enhanced dune protection of Main Beach to deal with the climate change modeling that was done by ZUZAC, as well as raise the crest of the East Headland, shore protection, and then a new entrance breakwater. So those 4 were specifically identified in the DMAF application, and that's what we received approval for. Even if we were able to utilize that DMAF program, it would impact the municipality financially through the contribution agreement for the harbor divestiture that was executed between the Crown and the municipality of Central Elgin in 2010. And specifically that contribution agreement says that any federal funds that are used for maintenance of the harbor would, outside of the contribution agreement, would have to be refunded back to the Crown. So we can't use that DMAF money, which is federal money, for the dredging. So at this point, staff are recommending that it be funded out of reserves and deplete the harbor contribution reserve that was provided in 2010 by the federal government. There is the potential for a long-term dredging strategy that council may wish to consider going forward, that in the event that we do we'll say the large dredge this time, that there is an opportunity to reduce long-term costs by doing an annual maintenance dredge just downstream of the King George VI lift bridge. And that would be based on shoreline work. So we would not, as a municipality, be in a position where we have to go back to the marine contracting industry, which is a limited market. We could utilize land-based contractors with long reach excavators or drag lines overdig a section of Kettle Creek immediately downstream of the lift bridge, and that acts as a sediment trap. So as sediment comes downstream from Kettle Creek upstream, it gets captured in that sediment trap and then gets removed on an annual basis. That allows us to reduce overall dredging costs over an extensive life cycle. So council may wish to give that consideration in the future. But in order to do that, we need to do the large dredge first to get down to that elevation, bottom channel elevation, to deal with the commitment that the municipality made with respect to flood control. It's important to note that the only dredging in Port Stanley that deals with flood control is within the harbor downstream of Kettle Creek Lift Bridge. Dredging upstream of the lift bridge will not provide any mitigation with respect to flood control. And appended to the staff report, there are 2 engineering reports. The first one's by Riggs Engineering, and that deals with the dredging downstream of the lift bridge. And the second report is a report from Pat Prodronovic from True Engineering. And True Engineering updated the flood mapping for Kettle Creek Conservation Authority in 2022. Part of that, they developed a digital model with respect to floodway as well as flood fringe. The municipality undertook soundings of Kettle Creek upstream of the lift bridge up to Warren Street and requested True to put those elevations into their model and then determine the impact of dredging positively or negatively with respect to flood control upstream of the King George the 6th lift bridge. And when it came back to dredge 2 scenarios, and they're identified in the report, but an extensive amount of dredging out 30 feet from the seawall and go down 8 feet approximately. That is the most extensive amount of dredging that was modeled. And that is in excess of what is currently being proposed by marina operators. And that even that extensive amount of dredging would lower the high water level on the regional event. And the regional event is Hurricane Hazel by 0.1 of a meter, 4 inches. So while it does lower it 4 inches on Hurricane Hazel event, it doesn't remove any property out of the flood fringe other than a small area in Lions Landing. So properties that are along Kettle Creek now that would be flooded in the regional event would still be flooded, although they wouldn't be flooded. They would be flooded 4 inches lower than what they are now.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. I have a question. There's only certain months that this work can be done. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a fisheries window, correct? So it would have to be done after July.
And July gets into the boating season. This after November, what's the window? I'm forgetting. Is it then up until July and then after November?
Yeah, so with respect to your concern about the boating season, this is the same type of dredging that's been undertaken in Port Stanley Harbor, even when the federal government had ownership. So you would have a barge with an excavator on it, loading a scow, a bottom dump scow, and it would still maintain marine traffic in and out. That's one of the commenting requirements with Ministry of Transport with respect to navigable waters. So this project will have to ensure that marine traffic is maintained. The issue with going later in the year we're in lake disposal, and the project would be impacted by winter storm events because you're loading material in a scow, taking it out into the lake, and you're not going to be able to do that in really rough waters.
Thank you. And I think it's November to March that you can be in. The approvals that you don't have at present, you thought they'd be coming in the next couple of weeks. How long would what's the common practice for a tender? How long would the tender be, please?
This tender we would anticipate putting out for 3 weeks.
Thank you. Other councillors? Councillor Graham and then Councillor Connor, please.
Is there a cost to dump that sediment and silt out into the lake?
Yes, yeah, we would, the tender would be on a price per cubic meter to excavate, put it in a scow and dispose of it. So yes, there's a cost.
Councillor Graham?
No, not for a cost. Are we having to pay like the ministry, or not a cost for them to do the job, but the cost to actually?
Understood.
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Graham, no, there's no, we'll say tipping fee or disposal fee. It's purely the cost to do the work and transport the material and get rid of the material.
Thank you. Councillor Connors, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Perrin, you mentioned the reserve funds that would cover this. Is staff comfortable with the fact that we have enough in reserve? I mean, obviously you have a budget in mind, and I don't want to ask you for the budget. We'll talk about that when the tenders come in, but is staff comfortable that we have enough in reserve?
Staff are comfortable that we have enough in reserve. And then the next step to that is the municipality owns lands in and around the harbor that under direction of previous council, we've been advancing the environmental assessments phase 2. So we understand the level of contamination on those lands on the west side of the harbor. They are not impacted by any time constraints through the agreement with Transport Canada because they were purchased from other property owners other than the federal government. So those lands, council can consider sale of those lands to assist in future maintenance costs for the harbor. Those lands were identified in the harbor secondary plan. And the advantage of that is one, the municipality would receive funds from sale of those lands, but then as they're developed, you'd have the perpetual tax money coming in to help support ongoing maintenance in the harbor as well.
I like the fact that, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
I like the fact that the timing is right for competition, as you talked about, and we might be, you might get some good competitive pricing. The last point, the last question I have is in regards to the annual dredging that you talked about. Does staff have any idea of costs of what that would be and how it, what it would look like?
We have talked some numbers amongst staff as well as Mr. Riggs, who's in this business on a daily basis. And our intent would be to come back at a future meeting of council with a business plan to help support that.
Thank you. Councillor Graham, please.
Is that 4.5 million that's budgeted for this? Is that coming out of the divestiture money? Or is there any divestiture money
Mr.
left?
Wait,
Or?
please. Thanks, Councillor Graham.
Through Mr. Mayor. So yes, the project is tentatively budgeted to be funded from the Harbor Reserve Equity Fund, which is the divestiture funds that have been held separately. The projected year-end balance is 2.3, 4.5 was within the budget. So this project would temporarily put the Harbor Divestiture Reserve Fund into a deficit position. However, at time of tender, you would determine actually how much that is. The 4.5 was arrived at prior to understanding there would be competitive marketplace right now.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Noble.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Perrin, is there an opportunity to do a light dredge and then push this to 24? Is that an option that we could look at building up reserve funds in the future, for the future?
Mr. Perrin, please.
Staff would not suggest doing a two-phased approach. What we have done is within the tender, we've given the ability for the contractor to do the work in 2023 or extend that over into 2024 to try to actually stimulate some competition as well. Because if a contractor has the potential to go to another site, but wants this one too, then they have the ability to do that. If you break it up into two separate tenders, you will be paying double mobilization costs. And it's not like we're floating equipment from London. We're bringing equipment from possibly Quebec. That's where one of the contractors is stationed out of. But that contractor is sitting down in Leamington right now.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Noble. Follow up, please.
through you, Mr. Mayor. If we do this, will this alleviate some of the flooding on William Street? Is that something that will help that situation?
Mr. Perrin, please.
No. The flooding on William Street it's all about elevation, and the water level in the lake is in close proximity to the elevation of William Street. And the outlets on William Street are submerged in the lake no matter what. So the flooding that is on William Street will be mitigated by the work that's contemplated in the DMAF program that we spoke about earlier. So that work includes improvement and upgrade of storm outlets out into the harbor, increasing the size of those, as well as some of the outlets on William, Sydenham, and Smith Street.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Councillor Graham, did you have another question?
Just one other comment. And I'm sure this is down the road and once you put it out for tender and all the different areas you're looking at, but if we're looking at in the DMAF agreement, building up the east break wall, would it not be a possibility to use some of that sediment to help do that?
Mr. Perrin, please. Thanks, Councillor Graham.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Graham, no, that is not a potential because the East Headland has already been risk managed through and has a certificate or is about to have a certificate of property use. That work contemplated capping the East Headland, and that was completed with 0.5 meter of table 1 material. So that's clean fill from a mine source, a pit. So in order to, ensure that the integrity of that certificate of property use is maintained and that risk management measures are maintained, no material from the harbor can go back on those lands because they would not meet table 1. So that's where they would have to go to out to lake or inland disposal. We wouldn't be able to utilize that as it has been in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Follow up.
Sorry, I meant the break wall, not the
Mr. Perrin.
East Headland, but the break wall.
The shoring up of the break wall is the revetment that's around the East Headland. And that's what the DMAF program is. So you have all the rock that's around the south and east side of the East Headland. The DMAF program is to shore that up and improve it and raise it, not with material like earth, but with actual armor stone.
Thank you, Mr. Perrin. Any other questions or comments? Ms. Wilson.
The motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Bachmann, seconded by Councillor Halpin, that report AMDS 0923, report Stanley Harbor dredging be received for information, and that council provides staff direction to proceed with the issuance of tender for dredging from the King George VI lift bridge downstream to the mouth of the Port Stanley Harbor.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Please. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Apologies, Mr. Perrin, I didn't have my glasses on.
No, that's okay. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. So council passed the resolution, but I don't know what my direction is. Ours, we're going to tender? Okay, all right.
So the
My
motion would
apologies.
say
Thank you.
Direction to proceed to tender.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mayor Sloan and through you and the rest of council. So procedurally, we're at the bylaws now, and based on council's direction from report CEP 0923, the refusal, We would be taking bylaws 2767, the OPA for 410 Sunset, and bylaw 2768, the Z zoning bylaw amendment. We'll take them together as information. So they will be not on the main motion to pass.
That's okay. Thank you. I'll need a mover and a seconder. Counselor Connors, Counselor Watson.
Mayor Sloan, the motion reads, moved by Counselor Connors, seconded by Counselor Watson, that bylaws 2767 and 2768 be received as information.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Now we'll take the balance of the bylaws collectively.
If I could get a mover and a seconder for that, please. Counselor, Deputy Mayor Noble. Counselor Connors.
First motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Counselor Connors, that bylaws 2766, 2771, and 2772 be read a first and a second time.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Sorry, I need a mover and a seconder on the final reading. Deputy Mayor Noble. Counselor Bachman.
The motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Counselor Bachman, that bylaws 2766, 2771, and 2772 be read a third time and finally passed.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Motions and notice of motion. We have a motion regarding recording of closed session meetings. This is from you, Counselor Halpin. Okay. Did you wish to discuss, or do you want me to just get a mover and a seconder?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. If you would like me to explain it, is there anyone that wanted to discuss it? Okay.
I think we're okay.
Well, let's hear what you have to say.
Sure. Well, for the short and sweet, if you go through the last 5 years of ombudsman reports, every time that there has been any concern raised about a closed session, one of two things happens, and that's either they end up commending the municipality for already recording them, or if they're not recording them, they end up advising that they probably should. So that seems to me like an oversight that we can remedy pretty easily here.
Any other thoughts, comments, Deputy Mayor Noble?
Just with recent developments, I'm just curious where we would store those and how they're safeguarded.
Thank you. I'll ask Mr. Shipway to comment, please.
To you, Mr. Mayor, like any of our confidential documents, confidential minutes, agendas, they'd be stored in a secure electronic document records management system with controlled access on the same, and they would only be utilized assuming this was passed in a situation where it needed to be provided to the closed meeting investigator.
Comments, other counselors? Counselor Watson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. When we go into closed session, we can speak a lot more freely and openly. If it's televised, do we have to do it in a more formal manner going forward?
Mr. Shipway, please. Thank you, Counselor Watson.
Through Mr. Mayor, closed session or in camera would never be televised. The purpose is that it's your opportunity to speak in private. I believe what it's speaking to is that there would be a recorded record of everything that went on that would be stored in the event there was a closed meeting investigation. But it would not be broadcast or posted.
Mr. Connor, or Counselor Connor, sorry.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. To Councillor Watson's opinion and Councillor Halpin, you know, my sense is that because we are new and because we're trying to learn, I think that the closed session is a good thing for us because we can banter. We're not allowed to do it on our own outside of council chambers. I enjoy the fact that we can talk openly and freely. I think that possibly at some point down the road, you could consider going to or eliminating the closed sessions or recording it. But I think until we get comfortable, I like the way it goes right now.
Thank you, Councillor Connors, for your comments. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. This is not a proposal that these be recorded so that the public can watch them, or a proposal that we should have to refer to each other as Councillor so-and-so and not by first names in closed session. This is about having a secure stored file of it somewhere so that if, for example, someone speculated that something had gone wrong in the session, or there was argument about what the final decision on something had been by council in session, it would be possible to go back and verify that. It wouldn't mean, as long as we're being polite and collegiate to one another, that there should be a change to the way that we speak in closed session, and it wouldn't mean that the public gets to watch them the way they watch a regular meeting. Just that if a problem arose, we would have access to look back at that.
Appreciate that, Councillor Halpin. I'm sort of a similar mind, Councillor Connors. I think especially as we're starting, it would be nice to have a place where we have some freedom. And more in fact, I don't know what problem we're seeming to address by doing this. But Councillor Graham, you have an issue, or sorry, you have a question.
I just wanted to comment about that we would have a record if we have to go back and talk about a decision, or if there's some discrepancy there. I'm pretty sure that the deputy clerk takes minutes on the closed in camera sessions. Is that correct? So we would have that information to refer back to.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Yes, Mayor Sloan, and through to the rest of council, as Mr. Shipway indicated, minutes are taken and they're stored securely in our records management system.
Thank you very much. If I could call the vote, please. No, did I not do the mover and a seconder? Sorry, Margaret, or Councillor Halpin, I'm getting, oh, Councillor Connor.
Through you, Mayor, does this recording of the minutes satisfy what Councillor Halpin is talking about?
Technical question. Do you want me to give that to you, Mr. Shipway?
Through Mr. Mayor, staff can answer technical questions, but we couldn't surmise the, understand the intent or opinion of Councillor Halpin on that. But we're happy to answer the technical questions of the how and the what if required.
Thank you, Mr. Shipway. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. Through Mayor Sloan. No, the minutes is not the same thing. And in fact, you'll see ombudsman's reports where the issue lies with, say, for example, two councillors having come to different conclusions about whether the minutes are accurate or not, because maybe one believes that a decision went one way and one went the other. And if there isn't a record, then you come back to people trying to remember who said what at that time. So what is typically recommended by the ombudsman in those cases is that there should be a recording of the session itself, so that if it were necessary to confirm the minutes, you could come back to that.
Thank you. I'm looking for a mover and a seconder, am I? Okay, Councillor Halpin moves. Councillor Bachmann seconds. If you could.
The motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Bachmann, that council direct staff to record video of all closed session meetings beginning immediately, and that council direct staff to bring forward an amendment to section 2.5 of the procedural bylaw 2606 to reflect that closed session meetings must be recorded.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. All those in favor? Opposed? Defeated?
Thank you. I would like for that to be recorded.
Please. Call the vote, please.
Councillor Halpin.
Yes.
Councillor Watts.
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
No. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, CAO clerk recruitment. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please, on this one? Councillor Halpin and a seconder, Councillor Watson. Discussion here. Councillor Halpin, did you want to speak to this?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. This is a motion that I raised. We need to have a special committee organized to do the hiring process for a new CAO. I believe, and I'm sure that Mr. Shipway can correct me, that would be 3 people for a special committee. Is that correct, Mr. Shipway?
Please, Mr. Shipway, thank you.
Through Mr. Mayor, the policy is silent on number of members, just that there would be a selection committee designated by council. If you go over 3 members, it becomes a quorum of council and you need to go and do notice and meetings, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you, Mr. Shipway. I believe that the last time this was done, it was a 3-person, and if we were to do that again, I did not have an entire group to suggest, but I thought that Councillor Connors and Councillor Bachman would both be suitable choices.
Thank you. Comments, questions? Councillor Graham.
I don't think that we're quite ready here. I think we have to set the terms of reference for this search. I think there's, we have to define the scope of work. We have to take a look at the delegation of authority. There's things that we have to do before we start the selection committee, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sloan. I believe that's something that the selection committee could do together in conjunction with our HR department. And considering that we know that Ms. Wilson intends to retire at some point this year, and we are already losing Mr. Shipway, I think it would be reasonable of us to try and have a plan in place.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin. Comments, questions? Councillor Connor, please.
The recruitment, through you, Mayor, the recruitment here is done through our HR department. And the people that would be nominated, whether it's 2 or 3 people, would be present during the interview process, speaking to the person. Is that my understanding, or is it wrong?
Well, first of all, there's no terms of reference, so I don't understand how we would, what the selection committee will do. I don't have enough background on this, but Councillor Halpin, I don't really understand.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. For example, at the time that Mr. Shipway was hired, interviews were done with a 3-person committee from council and HR, and questions could be asked by both. After that was done and the committee had come to a short list of candidates that they thought were suitable, they brought that back to the council for vote.
Thank you. What's the will of the council here? What would you like to do? Councillor Connors, please.
Should we have someone from HR, through you, Mayor?
Yes.
Should we have someone from HR come and talk to us? I mean, I don't know what all the ramifications are here. I don't know how this works.
Maybe we could get some more information and defer this to our next open meeting, our next general council meeting. Is that okay? Deputy Mayor?
Just one other question through you, Mr. Mayor. Is there a professional hiring committee, like a professional hiring company that typically there's in a corporation, if they're looking for key people, they'll hire somebody to do a little bit of the preempt work and find somebody or put an ad out to source that?
Thank you.
I'm at a loss for words.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor Noble. I think that you're talking about a recruiter. I think these are a lot of items which we don't just have the answer for right now. I'd like some time. I'd like to defer this to the next meeting, please. Thank you. We have I think I have to, how does this work, Morgan? We have a vote on this?
Mayor Sloan, procedurally, the mover is Councillor Halpin and the seconder on this motion is Councillor Watson. Again, if you wanted to do a friendly amendment to defer this, if they'd have to be in agreement to that, or you'd have to vote on this motion because it's on the table.
Morgan, so we get a couple of weeks and get some more answers to your questions and talk to the people that you've suggested for a committee. Is that okay for a friendly amendment to you?
Respectfully, Mayor Sloan, I think it would be better that we choose a committee now and entrust that committee to get those answers from HR. I'm sure that our HR department is familiar with recruiting processes and could talk with them about
Okay.
that.
Well, respectfully, Councillor Halpin, I don't think we have an HR department, do we, Mr. Shipway?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, we have a HR staff who handles this sort of
I've
matters.
never met the HR department, but thank you. Councillor Watson, what are your thoughts?
I would have a friendly amendment to defer this if need be, when we get more information from everybody. Oh, sorry. Through you, Mayor.
Motion on the floor. If both don't agree to it, you have to vote on the motion on the floor.
Okay, so Councillor Halpin, you're not okay with the changes? Okay, so we'll have to call the vote on what is put forward, which is so director for committee to begin the, sorry, I'm going to let you read this, aren't I? Apologize.
Sorry. So again, procedurally, the motion was based on the 3.6.1 of the Central Elgin Human Resources Recruitment Policy that council approved the establishment of a selection committee to begin the recruitment process for a new chief administrative officer / clerk, and that said selection committee could be comprised of the following members.
For the most, that's so the motion reads, all those in favor? Opposed? Defeated.
Is this for clarification, Mayor
Please.
Sloan? Is there still something that you're requesting of staff?
I'll
Or is-
follow up with, I'll follow up, not on a separate item when we're, thank you.
Okay.
Front Street slope stabilization is next. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Connors, Councillor Graham. Pardon me, discussion? Oh, Councillor Connors?
Through you, Mayor, I mean, I went down, I had a look at this, and there's no doubt that at some point this is going to have to be done. But my, ringing in my head is, I want to know more about it before I actually have to vote on it. In other words, having someone come in and do a presentation for us, bring us up to speed. I've said to people that I've spoken to that, had we been involved with this from the get-go, we would know, where it was, where it is today, and how long we have until we have to do it. I'd like to see some sort of chart of, or some sort of talk about, what's the rate of recession or how did it look 5 years ago compared to how it looks today? Can we get another year out of it? Can we not? I'd like to open it up to, someone coming in and sitting down and answering questions with us and just banter back and forth so we get better educated on this.
Thank you. Councillor Bachman, please.
Respectfully to Councillor Connors and the rest of our councillors and staff, we have in-house people that can do this. I asked one of them to take me down there and explain everything, went through the step by step. We have the in-house people that if you need an explanation, if anyone needs an explanation, I would offer their services. I can't officially do that, but I would recommend that you talk to these people, have them take you down, walk you through it. Once you can understand the ramifications, and I'm seeing this, pardon the pun, as a slippery slope on this one, because the longer we wait, the more aspects we're going to have to absorb as far as if a major storm happens, and I keep saying if, but no one can tell me it won't happen next. No one has a crystal ball on erosion. If it hits, and it could hit hard. I'm sincerely worried that it's going to take out some of that road, and then we're going to be on the hook for infrastructure repairs underneath the road, and we're going to affect the homeowners up there, and then lawsuits and blah blah, and then it's just a domino effect that I see happening. And the longer we put this off, the worse it's going to get, and the more expensive. It's not going to get cheaper. I'm sorry, I don't see it. I can only see it getting more expensive on top of what we do now. I would move, that we just proceed with the lowest tender and get this thing done.
Thank you, Councillor Bachman. Councillor Graham, please.
I think the motion on the point of the notice of motion right now is just to have the engineer come in and talk to us. So I'm not sure that, I don't think that we're voting on getting it done right now. We're just talking about having the engineer coming in, which I think Mr. or Councillor Connors has made some valid points to that the engineer, because they are an engineer, would be able to provide a lot more very succinct and to the point information that I would like to know as well.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Sloan. I think a bit of confusion I see here is that when I read consulting engineer, I took that to mean a consultant engineer from outside. And I think something that Councillor Bachmann is pointing out quite rightly is that we do have an engineer and that we have experts here that can speak to this. So just to understand better, Councillor Connors, are you suggesting that we should get an engineer separate to our own engineer in, or that you'd like our engineer to come and explain this to us?
Through me, I believe.
There's been an allusion as we've talked through this, sorry, through you, Mr. to Councillor Halpin, that we had consultants involved and we had professional people involved that recommended to staff or supported what staff had said. And, you know, I'm not discounting the fact that staff can speak to this as well. And I didn't mean it that way. What I meant was to have an open session where we can ask questions, because we're being asked to spend half of our budget here. And I just want to be more informed on why I should vote yes or why I should vote no. And if we had the consulting engineer, the consulting firm, and some of our staff here at the same time to have an open question and answer period so we could better understand what was going on, I'd be happy with that.
Thank you, Councillor Connors. I too would like an external consultant. The staff are busy, and we mentioned that in the last little while. I think it also, they look to consultants, as we all do, and it gives a bit of a third party perspective as such a large undertaking. So that's my thought on it. If Councillor Graham, did you have a comment? Okay, Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. I do, through you, Mayor Sloan. As I said before, if this was a matter of needing a bit more information from our staff who are paid to be on our team and would in principle want what is good for us to give us the best possible advice for us, then I'd be more agreeable to it. But what we're saying here amounts to, we would get better advice by paying additional people outside of our own staff. And our staff are protected by the same point of privilege as us. We have to believe that they are professionals capable of this and willing to do this.
Thank you, Councillor Halpin. Any other comments? Councillor Bachmann, please.
Not to echo Councillor Halpin's, we have professional staff that we are paying to look at our budget that we're going to look at in the next few weeks and nickel and dime the budget. And now we're going to say we're going to spend more money to either contradict or affirm what our own staff is saying. I mean, I don't see the benefit of bringing in an outside consultant when we have those professionals in-house.
Thank you, Councillor Connor. I presume that, Mr. Shipway, we did bring in consultants for this project for input. Is that correct?
Through Mr. Mayor, in speaking with Councillor Connors, in drafting this, yes, the municipality through the EA process and through the assumption that it moves forward, there would be consulting engineers involved, the IBI group, and whatever the direction of council is, the consulting engineer, the in-house staff, all professionals can provide advice on whatever council's direction is.
Great, thank you. Councillor Connors, please.
Again, no disrespect to staff in this regard. I just want a better explanation and a better understanding. So if we can do that with in-house staff, fine. But if we need to bring someone in who's been retained already by us, then that's good too.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Watson,
Yeah,
please.
through you, Mr. Mayor. When was that last report done, Mr. Shipley? Or Mr. Perrin?
Through Mr. Mayor, there was an update done last year, so it would have been, I don't have the exact date, but it was early 2020, late 2021 or early 2022 to do an assessment when council looked at pushing it. And then the EA was done before that. And then before that, there's been a number of reports. So IBI is the most recent consulting engineer that's been involved in the EA and the tender design.
Thank you. Councillor Watson, please.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. We're such a new council, and I don't know if we knew all the places to go to get this information. I knew it would be a lot more beneficial if I had a lot more information, and I'm learning. So I would love to see a consultant in again to look at this and explain everything. And if we can all get working like a team, I'm sure we'll be able to get this puppy, taken care of. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Deputy Mayor Noble, please.
I don't think that anybody's, I sense a little frustration in the room, and I don't know that anybody's really trying to frustrate anybody. I think that this group has really gotten elected on the goals of being prudent with our community's money. And when we were presented with this large expenditure, we all kind of took a deep breath and went, wow, that's a lot of money. And that was really how we got to this point. And I don't think I don't think anybody should be frustrated by the point that we are where we are, because we're here because we were being prudent and being cautious with our community's money. And so going forward, we just have to make sure that we continue to be prudent with their money, and also obviously keep people safe and make sure that we're doing things going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you. Ms. Wilson?
Motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Connors, seconded by Councillor Graham, that council direct staff to schedule the consulting engineer for the Front Street Slope Stabilization Project to present to council at a future meeting.
Thank you. All those in favor? Carried. Other business? We don't have any?
Through you, Mayor Sloan, I do have other business.
Okay. Other business, Councillor Halpin, please.
Thank you. I have one more motion here, which unfortunately was presented to Councillor Graham and I after the agenda had already been published. So I hope that you'll bear with me. That is a motion to support Bill 5, which is the Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act. So that act would, well, I'll read you the motion here. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Central Elgin express its support for Bill 5, Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act, which would require the Code of Conduct for municipal councillors and members of local boards to include a requirement to comply with workplace violence and harassment policies, and permit municipalities and local boards to direct the Integrity Commissioner to apply to the court to vacate a member's seat if the Commissioner's inquiry determines that the member has contravened this requirement, and further that this resolution be circulated to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Honourable Stephen Blais, Orléans MPP, and the Honourable Rob Flack, Elgin, Middlesex, London MPP.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Councillor Graham, please.
Sorry, I'm not sure that I was even aware that this was presented to me. I haven't received anything on it that I'm aware of. Although I did work today, so maybe it was today that it was given to me. I'm not sure, but I don't know what Bill 5 is. So I most certainly need a lot more time to take a look and understand what this bill is before I can make any determination about it at all.
Thank you. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Sloan. It was presented by email to Councillor Graham and I on Saturday, and I sent a copy out to the council so that those who had time would review it. Bill 5 suggests that the same OHSA rules about violence and harassment in workplaces should be applicable to municipal councils as to any workplace. And also that in cases where there's an egregious act against that, the Integrity Commissioner should be able to apply to the provincial court to remove a person from their seat.
Thank you. I'm going to need some more information on this as well, I'm afraid. So I'm going to call the vote. Is that what we're doing, Morgan? Or Councillor Halpin? We're voting on this. Sorry, pardon me, Ms. Wilson.
Mayor Sloan, procedurally, I don't have a mover and a seconder.
Okay. If you'd like to move it, Councillor Halpin. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Bachman. Deputy Mayor Noble, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, are we now starting to create laws? Because I'm sorry, just looking back at this is a bill that's only at the first read, and yeah, and it hasn't. I feel like everything about this is very loose, and I'm just a little cautious that we're starting to create laws on our local councils.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Noble, Councillor Halpin.
Thank you through you, Mayor Sloan. This is a member's bill, and what they're suggesting is that because it is about making sure that there is accountability for the behavior of municipal councillors and municipal members of council, they're requesting that municipalities who support that accountability would write to contribute that they support it, so that that would help it to move forward.
Thank you. We have a mover with second. Councillor Connors, please.
So through you, Mayor Sloan, Councillor Halpin, or maybe I should direct this to Mr. Shipway. Wouldn't council in any area be held accountable by the HR department and the rules and regulations in that county? And there are harassment policies in place, et cetera, already. Wouldn't we be held accountable by the HR department?
I'm going to step in for, or Mr. Shipway, if you wish to answer, that's fine. So this is a private members legislation bill, correct? And at the end of the day, I'm not, Mr. Shipway.
Through Mr. Mayor, to council, in the simplest form, disregarding the content of it, various legislation is passed in various ways by Parliament, and in this instance, it appears Councillor Halpin is seeking council support for proposed legislation. That's, I think, in the simplest form of what's going on here, that's what it is. In regards to why this legislation was put in place, I think the background is there was some events that took place in other larger municipalities where there was significant issues and where an employee or a staff person would be held account in one manner, maybe an elected official would be different. And I think this legislation on the first read seeks to align the manner in which those would be handled, but that's just my first read of it.
Thank you. Councillor Bachman.
Basically, as I understand it through my readings, is this basically just a respect and accountability issue. And I think we have that. So by supporting it, I don't see the harm in that.
Thank you, Councillor Bachman. For me, just personally, removing elected officials is kind of a big one, especially when the Integrity Commissioner, I don't think those are public, those meetings. And I don't support it at all, but Councillor Graham.
I just want to reiterate that if it was sent to me on Saturday, I didn't check my emails on the weekend and I worked today, but so again, I would need more time to review it, but I believe we have a process in place already with the Integrity Commissioner that you go and talk to the Integrity Commissioner, and I'm sure Mr. Shipway can tell me the process, or correct me if I'm wrong. The Integrity Commissioner then makes a determination and then brings it back to council to vote on, rather than just giving the Integrity Commissioner the ability to remove an elected official. Is that correct, Mr. Shipway?
Mr. Shipway.
The Integrity Commissioner, as it stands right now, has no ability to remove. Only a court could remove an individual.
Thank you, Mr. Shipway. Councillor Graham.
Sorry, but is that the process, Mr. Shipway? Is that the Integrity Commissioner makes a recommendation, brings it back to council, and council votes on it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it depends on the situation and what the contravention is. The Integrity Commissioner has certain powers already to go to the courts, but it depends on the situation. It would be difficult to answer that without knowing the specifics.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Noble.
Just to clarify, this Bill 5 is just a proposed bill, but we actually have Bill 168 that lays out, and it's a law, how all harassment and issues within the workplace are dealt with. That's 168. And a lot of us probably over the years had training on that, and that directly, like through employment law, that looks after most of these issues. So I definitely caution us against starting to create our own laws within our council.
Thank you. Councillor Halpin.
Thank you through you, Mayor Sloan. This, well, first off, I would say that from reading the integrity process, the Integrity Commissioner's report is in public meeting. So it would be something where the public would understand what's happening. But this bill does not really address the workplace issue. The problem of Bill 168 is that workplace requirements aren't applied in that way to municipal councils right now. So if you were to make a complaint about harassment against a municipal councillor right now, the integrity commissioner could come back and suggest that the council vote to reprimand them. But no matter how significant that act was, they could not come back and recommend that the council vote to take that to a court and ask that the person be removed. So where a person could in a workplace be fired if something egregious enough happened, there is no process to do that, no matter what a municipal councillor does. And so Bill 5 looks to create better accountability.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Noble.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. But with what we have in front of us, it doesn't lay out the terms and conditions of what could be deemed per an opportunity for dismissal from this board. It just says harassment or like a it just says harassment. It doesn't actually lay out, what level of whatever issue. It's just basically got it.
Thank you. Can I call the vote, please?
If I may, Mayor Sloan, I was going
Sure,
to suggest
absolutely.
that it sounds like Deputy Mayor Noble would like a friendly amendment for us to read about this and vote on it next session. Would that be appropriate?
I'd rather, well, I'm not going to get, I'm not, sorry. Thank you, Councillor Halpin. I'm not going to speak for Deputy Mayor Noble. That's up to him.
I'm good if we just deal with the motion on this that's on the table.
Thank you. If I could call the vote, please. We've read it once. I don't think we need to read it again. Is everyone okay with that? All those in favor? Opposed?
I ask
Defeated?
that it be recorded, please.
Sure, we can record the vote.
Councillor
Or-
Grant? Councillor Halpin?
Yes.
Councillor Watson?
No.
No.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Noble?
No.
No.
Defeated?
Right thing. Sorry, folks. So I just need a mover and seconder to move into closed session.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Right. Okay. Could I get a mover and a seconder to go into closed session, please? Councillor Halpin, Councillor Connors.
The motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Councillor Connors, that council proceed into closed session at 9:22 PM in order to address the matter pertaining to a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board. Advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. Information explicitly supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board by Canada, a province or territory, or a crown agency of any of them.
Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now we've got a okay. Thank you. We now have to go through Ms. Wilson. Where are we here? Okay, sorry, I'm just a little bit up. If I get a mover and seconder to rise out of closed session, Deputy Mayor Noble, Councillor Connors. All those-
The motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Deputy Mayor Nobles, seconded by Councillor Connors, that council adjourn from closed session and return to open session at 10:32 PM.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. One CS2, if I could get a mover and a seconder, please. Deputy Mayor Noble, Councillor Watson.
Motion reads, Mayor Sloan, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Watson, that closed session item CS2, read King George VI Lift Bridge be received for information and that staff proceed as directed by council.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 2, if I could get a mover and seconder. Councillor Connor, Councillor Bachman, please.
Motion reads Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Connors, seconded by Councillor Bachman, that closed session item CS3 Front Street Slope Stabilization be received for information.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. If I get a mover and a seconder for number 3, please. Deputy Mayor Noble and Councillor Watson.
Motion reads Mayor Sloan, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Watson, that closed session item CS4 Reshared Services be received for information.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number four, if I could get a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Noble, Councillor Connors.
Motion reads Mayor Sloan, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Connors, that closed session item CS5 release agreements be received for information and that staff proceed as directed by council.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Number 5, mover and a seconder. Councillor Halpin, Deputy Mayor Noble.
Motion reads Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Halpin, seconded by Deputy Mayor Noble, that closed session item CS6 economic development be received for information and that staff proceed as directed by council.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carry. Now we're moving on to the bylaw. Bylaw 2769 confirmation bylaw. If I get a mover and a seconder. Council Deputy Mayor Noble. Councillor Bachman.
Motion reads Mayor Sloan, moved by Deputy Mayor Noble, seconded by Councillor Bachman, that bylaw 2769 be read a first and a second time.
And then mover and seconder on the second part, another mover and seconder. Connors, Councillor Connors, Councillor Halpin.
Motion reads Mayor Sloan, moved by Councillor Connors, seconded by Councillor Halpin, that bylaw 2769 be read a third time and finally passed.
And now, just for a mover and a seconder for adjournment, Councillor Bachman, Councillor Halpin. All those in favor?
Motion
Thank you.
reads Mayor Sloan,
Sorry.
moved by Councillor Bachman, seconded by Councillor Halpin, that the regular meeting of council dated Monday, February the 27th, 2023 be adjourned at 10:35 PM. And the next regular meeting of council be scheduled for Monday, March the 13th, 2023 at 7 PM.
Thank you very much for those watching at home. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, council. Thank you.